Chapter 33. To me, she was Abuelita. He fought with the Germans. However, before going back to the beginning, Dan was to meet the woman he had called Abuelita through his childhood. She was Daniela's mother. Soon after their first date, Daniela asked Arnaldo if he wished to come to their house to have a meal with her and her mother. Arnaldo was a little taken aback by the sudden and perhaps premature invitation, but accepted nonetheless. Since the appliance store was closing early the next day, Arnaldo made his way to Daniela's house, still wondering why the young woman wanted for him to meet her mother. He would soon find out. As he was welcomed at the door, Arnaldo knew he would like the place. It was inviting. The aroma of good cooking was permeating the walls and was teasing the guests' nostrils as soon as one went past the threshold. "Thank you for accepting to have dinner with us, Arnaldo," Daniela's mother said as he stepped into the living room. "This is my son Alexander, Arnaldo." She extended an arm to him. "Come and have a seat. Dinner is almost ready." "Hi," said Alexander, a bit timidly, as Arnaldo sat down. Have you lived in Caracas very long?" "Oh no, my brother and I just arrived about 3 weeks ago. Our brother-in-law has lived here for a while, though. What about you? Daniela told me that you came from Sumperk in Czechoslovakia, right?" Alexander shook his head. "No, we left Europe that way, but our family is from Germany. My father is still back there. He's fighting for Germany." Arnaldo nodded concertedly. All of his life Dan had known his Abuelita was from Europe, but it was only at that moment that it dawned on him that their families may have once been on opposite sides of the conflict before Mussolini drew Italy into the war and rallied around the German flag. There was no circumventing the past or trying to erase it. The fact was incontrovertible. Arnaldo was in love with a German girl. "I see from your face," Daniela's mother said as she came back to the living room. "Alexander has told you where we came from." "Yes, he has," Arnaldo replied reservedly, but with a smile appearing on his lips. "But what our families escaped is the war itself, not the people that have been thrown into this horrible situation, whether they liked it or not." "Yes, Arnaldo, this is exactly how I felt. My poor husband was recruited practically against his will. It did not matter that he had left behind a wife and 2 children. The Third Reich needed him to fight for Hitler." Arnaldo was confounded. Then a phrase came to his mind. "Women and children are not your enemies, they are your future." He had no idea where it came from, but he was ready to abide by what the sentence inferred. "I understand," he added. "I always knew." "Knew what?" Daniela asked, coming out of the kitchen. "Sorry, I always knew that I would meet a wonderful lady like you." "Don't, Arnaldo. Don't what?" "Don't start flirting," Daniela replied, giggling and taking his hand and pulling him off the couch. "Let's sit down and have dinner, okay?" When Dan arrived home later that night, Gustavo had gone to bed while Damianos and Chippewa were waiting for him. "So how was the evening?" "Fine, Chippewa. Why didn't either of you tell me or remind me that Daniela's father was fighting for the Germans?" "Sit down," Damianos ordered. Dan did. "And now listen to me. You knew all along that your Abuelita came from Germany. She and her son and daughter, your mother, escaped the German devastation of their country while your grandfather joined the Third Reich. And I am sure that Daniela's mother explained how he had to enlist, or didn't she?" Dan nodded. "Yes, that's one of the first things she did explain." "So what's the problem? There hasn't been any feuding between your families for nearly 70 years. Do you want to start a feud of your own?" "No, Damianos. What my father did or accepted at the time is not something I would want to change. I just didn't realize how close our families had been to become enemies once, when in fact we had no reason not to love each other." "Precisely," Chippewa put in, taking Dan's book from the coffee table and handing it to him. "I think it is time for you to read one of the last paragraphs of your book." Dan took the book, laid it in his lap and opened it. The pages flicked by themselves to the last one. Dan read the paragraph aloud. "Fortitude and force of character was the crowning and underlying trait to all the tasks you have undertaken to this day. Fortitude has helped you to be more tolerant toward others, to accept the hand you have been dealt, to endure the severity of enmity, to show humility in face of extravagance, to display determination in face of hindrance, to cast your eyes away from temptation, to persevere in your chosen task, to have the patience to pursue your endeavours, and to impart trust to deserving parties, and ultimately to forgive yourself for your misguided pursuits. Therefore, fortitude will assist you in overcoming all problems that may be ahead of you. Remember, you are made of cloth that will not accept defeat as an inevitable outcome. Remember, you are made of a cloth that will not accept defeat as an inevitable outcome, Chippewa repeated. You see, Dan, throughout the journey you undertook with Gustavo and Damianos, you went as far back as the historical records, allowing you to do so. There you found the people who planted the seeds of your very existence. You recognized many of your ancestors in yourself. Some of them you could not readily understand, but nonetheless admitted into the fold of your memories. These illustrious men and women forged your character. They delineated your attitude toward life itself and towards others. They also determined your goals in many ways. Should you wish one day to stray from the path that has been traced for you, please remember you will not only offend God, but those who gave you life, strength, and fortitude. You're right, Chippewa. When I strayed, I didn't think I would hurt anyone other than me. When I had my latest bike accident and fell into that coma, I only thought it was a lesson for me to learn, which in essence was wrong. Yes, it was a hard lesson for me to learn. But it was offensive to those who risk their lives and limbs literally for their prodigy, for the preservation of their descendants. Even my grandfather, the one who fought for Germany, I believe did, so not thinking of attaining a victory for his country, but to preserve the children's lives, those who were to be born after the war. Yes, Dan, you took those risks that were far from being designed to preserve your descendants. They were to satisfy your hungers for thrills, the fear for your life, the fear to lose you, the anxiety your family felt when you flew down the track were none of your concern, and that, Dan, is probably the sum total of God's reproach. Chippewa took in a breath. But now it is time for you to recall those who have ensured your future. He took the book and opened it at the first page. Arnaldo Ricciulli. At the beginning, you were and you are the direct, legitimate descendant of the kings of Sheba. In the table of nations, Sheba, along with Dedan, is listed as a descendant of Noah's son Ham, as sons of Rama, son of Cush. Later on, in Genesis, Sheba and Dedan are listed as names of sons of Jokshan, son of Abraham. You are the direct and legitimate descendant of Gesamid, King Gershon, from the land of the Levant. You are the direct and legitimate descendant of Roman Empire Caesar, Marcus, Philippus, Augustus, the Palmyrene Empress Julia Aurelia Zenobia, wife of Nicephorus, the king of kings. You are the legitimate descendant of Sheiks Shemor of Akora. Related to Ghassanid, King Gershon, the prophet Muhammad is thus your ancestor. Arnaldo Ricciulli is his descendant. You are the direct descendant of illustrious families and of illustrious men such as Gaspar and Antonio Ricciulli. You are the representation of these men's efforts toward magnifying the glory of God. You are to respect those who have brought you to this world, and those to whom you have given your name. Arnaldo Ricciulli, it is now time for you to return to your present, but not before you bid farewell to those who have escorted you throughout your journey, and to those angels who have watched over you every moment of your past. When Chippewa closed the book, Dan's eyes were red with unshed tears. I can't help but feel that I have yet so much to learn. It's been such a fantastic journey. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't be able to forget any of it. Could you tell us, for you, who is the most prominent of your ancestors? It's difficult to say, Chippewa. I find all of these men and women absolutely fascinating. Even if I only gained a single iota of their immense wisdom, I feel much richer for it. But I think the one that will have marked my life or will remain in my memory always in Antonio Ricciulli. His rectitude, his force of character, and his unyielding honesty are traits that I wish I have inherited. Quite understandable, Damianos agreed. And what would you wish for your children to remember from their journey? I couldn't speak for each of them in particular, but I suspect that Daniel will never forget his friend Billy at the pizza shop. In fact, I am quite sure he would have already found a way to go back to Key West for a visit. What's all this? A sleepy Gustavo asked as he ambled from his bedroom to sit on the sofa beside Dan. What's happening? It's time for you both to go home, Gustavo. What do you say to that? Gustavo turned to Damianos. I'm saying that you people should choose another time of the day to make your announcements, he grunted. I don't want to go anywhere in my pyjamas. Dan cracked up laughing, and so did Damianos and Chippewa. I'll make sure you're dressed properly when we get to the hospital. What hospital was that? Gustavo interrupted, eyes opened wide now. Who's sick? Have you forgotten? Damianos asked. I don't remember being sick lately, or... Gustavo stopped in mid-sentence. Oh dear Lord, now I see what you guys mean. Dan will be waking up soon, won't he? And you will too, Gustavo, soon afterward, Chippewa added. This journey will have left a mark on you such that you will stay away from drinking and will maintain in contact with your cousin, several times removed, Dan Politano. Dan nodded. I'll make sure he does. Everyone is waiting for you to wake up, Dan, Damianos said. I know. Truth be told, I cannot believe I earned my redemption, but since it seems to be so, all I want and need now is to go home. My children are grown up, I know, but if nothing else, this journey has taught me that we're mere babes in the woods of life. However old these kids are, I feel they'll need guidance. Well said, Dan, they heard Solangi say as she and Damien appeared in front of them. We both agree that there's very little for you to do now except go back to 2014 and take your wife and children in your arms. You deserve every second of life that is awaiting you beyond the walls of this room, Dan, Damien added, a broad smile coming across his lips. And with these words, Damien snapped his fingers to transport Dan to the hospital, where he still lay unconscious. As Dan stirred, Malou took his hand into hers. Honey, are you waking up? She could not quite believe Dan was opening his eyes. Oh God, thank you, she literally screamed, kissing her husband on the forehead. Damianos, Chippewa and Gustavo entered the room quietly, while the angels made themselves inconspicuous. Chippewa, Damianos, Gustavo, what are you doing here? Malou asked, lifting her gaze from the bed. Dear Lord, it's so good to see you. I've prayed every minute of every day for this moment to come. Where are the children? Dan uttered, feeling groggy still. How are they? Let me get them for you, Malou answered, taking her cell phone out of her pocket. I know I'm not supposed to use this in the hospital. I don't think anybody will mind. She then punched the number of Daniel's phone. The 3 children were having lunch in the cafeteria. Stefano and Daniel had come down from university for a visit. Your dad's awake, is all Malou said before hanging up and looking at Damianos, Chippewa and Gustavo. Thank you, all 3 of you. I can't imagine how I will ever repay you. You will do nothing of the sort, Damianos said. You just make sure Dan remains safe. That's the best gesture of appreciation you could give us. And for now, I think we'd better leave. Chippewa then pulled the little key that Dan would need to open his book out of his pocket and handed it to him. Your book is in the den, Dan. Open it, read it, and record suggestions whenever you need a helping hand. Before Malou had time to object, Damianos, Chippewa and Gustavo had vanished. Malou smiled and kissed her husband just in time before the door swung open and the 3 children rushed in and crowded their father. Gabby was caressing her dad's face as if she wanted to make sure he was there, that it wasn't just a spectre of him. Daniel couldn't control the tears that had been menacing to fall since he entered the room. As for Stefano, he wrapped an arm around his mother's shoulders and kissed her on the cheek. He'll be okay now, he murmured in her ear. She nodded. Once he had recovered a little from their show of affection, Dan said, I will promise you something now. I will never be away from you again. From this point forward, I will always be there to guide you until the end of times. That's a lot longer than I ever expected, Dad, Gabby commented, all smiles. But I'll take you any time and for however long you want. Bursting in loud laughter, the little family didn't see the smile on the man with the goatee and a patch of white in his black hair standing just outside of Dan's room.